Hello, I'm Eric.
And I'm Melissa.
And as our series nears its end, we thought it would be appropriate to look at some Sega Master System games that also showed up on the Sega Genesis. Actually, it's probably the other way around. These are Sega Genesis games that showed up on the Sega Master System.
And are we going to compare graphics?
We can, yeah, sure. There'll be a comparison. I've actually only picked 5. There are many more. Let's go through these 5 and then we'll talk about some of the other ones that you can look out for too. And we are going to start alphabetically with Altered Beast. Altered Beast, of course, was the original Sega Genesis pack-in game. And it was later back-ported. It came from the arcade, then it was Genesis, then it became a Master System game. This is a game that was far too ambitious for what the 8-bit hardware could do. This game on the Master System is very choppy. And the reason for that is because it doesn't use any sprites. It uses the background to redraw every character as a background item, element, instead of using the sprites, which can be moved anywhere on the screen. The background characters can only be moved in 8-pixel chunks. So this is very clunky. I don't even like Altered Beast that much on the Genesis, so can't really recommend the Master System version. But they tried, and the screenshots look great. So for 1990, probably some people were fooled into buying this one.
Welcome to your doom.
In contrast to that, we have Ghouls and Ghosts on the Master System, which is actually an excellent port. This is quite a good port, and if you did not have the Genesis version, I would recommend. If the Master System was the only one available to you, this is definitely playable. This is a fantastic port of the Genesis game. I consider this a Genesis classic, and the Master System is quite good. Next, Golden Axe, another arcade translation. Golden Axe on the Genesis is gorgeous. Not quite as good as the arcade, but gorgeous. It was one of my most desired games back when the Genesis first came out. It wasn't the launch game, but it came out pretty quickly, and I definitely would have gotten Golden Axe for the Genesis had I had it at the time. Obviously, I've got it now. The Master System port is fairly good. It does away with the 3 characters. You can only pick the Barbarian, but you are allowed to pick the magic. So in the original game, each character has their own type of magic: fire, thunder, electricity, or wind, or something. I don't know what it is. Ice, maybe. In this one, you can pick the magic, but you always have to pick the Barbarian character. Seems like the moveset is pretty good. It's a little bit choppy, but it's certainly playable. Not a bad translation, but still, probably better on the Genesis. In fact, that's probably true of all of them. All right, and then we come to the classic Genesis game, Sonic. This is first and foremost a Genesis game, right?
Yes,
and then they later ported it back down to the Master System, and they actually changed it. It is not the same game. So with that said, the Sonic on the Sega Master System is like the Game Gear version. A little bigger viewport into it because of the bigger screen, but this is still a very competent game. Quite good, different than the Genesis version, so worth a play. And finally is Strider.
Ooh.
This is an arcade game initially, and the Genesis version boasts the first 8 mega power.
Yes, 8 mega memory.
And as we recall from our discussion about cards and cartridges before, 8 megabits would translate to 1 megabyte. So this is a 1 megabyte cartridge on the Genesis. The Master System version is also a conversion of the arcade. So it's comparable to the Genesis version, obviously downgraded a little bit for 8-bit graphics, but still quite a good translation and worthy of play on the 8-bit system if that's your only choice.
Okay.
So that's it for the 5 that I wanted to focus on. I did want to mention there's actually a number of Genesis games that made it back down to the Master System later in its life. And I'm going to just read off some of the ones that we didn't cover. You can be on the lookout for if you want to see how Genesis and Master System compare. There's, of course, the puzzle game Columns, which is a Tetris type game that came out on the Genesis. Yep, with Jules. Dick Tracy, based on the movie Dick Tracy, and the comic that came out, but there was a movie at the time in the early 90s. E-SWAT, another arcade conversion. Michael Jackson's Moonwalker. This is a cool game. The music is good, and the Master System translation is pretty good. Super Monaco GP. This is just a racing game. Not much to say there. And then there's a couple of honorable mentions I want to mention that are not direct ports, but they're very similar games that appeared on both the Master System and the Genesis. And those are Super Hang-On and Super Thunderblade, the Genesis. And then they were just Thunderblade and Hang-On. They're slightly different games, but they're also very similar.
Yeah.
So there's a number of games that came out on the Master System and the Genesis. And just because it's on the 8-bit system doesn't mean it's not worth playing. Many of these, like Ghouls and Ghosts, Strider, Sonic, are certainly worth playing on the Sega Master System.
So do you think they did that just to kind of like appease because the Genesis came out kind of quickly after the Master System.
Yeah, it was like 3 years.
There wasn't like that long.
No.
Do you think that was kind of like to help appease the transition?
Probably, or it was done to, to keep the Master System, to get people into the Master System who couldn't necessarily afford going up to the 16-bit. I think they were trying to come out with a budget line for people, and but it didn't do much good. So that should cover it for our look at Sega Master System games that appeared on the Genesis, or vice versa.
Okay, so we hope you have enjoyed our video series. We have one video left, and come back to see that as we celebrate 30 years with the Sega Master System.